Amara was a young girl with a heart as pure as the morning sun and a beauty that made people stop and admire her. She lived in a small African village surrounded by lush green fields, towering baobab trees, and a river that sparkled under the golden sky. The villagers adored her, not just for her striking features, but also for her kindness. She helped the elderly carry water from the well, played with the little children, and sang songs that made even the birds pause to listen. Her beauty, however, was both a blessing and a curse. While the villagers loved her, there was one person who despised her existence, her stepmother, Nia. Unlike Amara, Nia carried bitterness in her heart. She was once considered beautiful in her youth, but time and hardship had hardened her features, and with them, her soul. She saw Amara as a constant reminder of what she had lost. Every time a villager complimented the young girl, Nia's hatred grew. Nia had a daughter of her own, Zala, who longed for the same admiration that Amara received effortlessly. Though Zala was not unkind, she often found herself caught between her mother's expectations and her own desires. Nia whispered venomous words into her daughter's ears, filling her with resentment toward Amara. "They only see her," she would say. "They ignore you because of her. She takes everything from you." Amara's father, a traveling merchant, was rarely home. He traded goods in distant lands, bringing back beautiful fabrics, spices, and trinkets. Every time he returned, he showered Amara with gifts and love, oblivious to the way Nia treated her in his absence. He never saw the cold glares, the extra chores, or the way Nia made Amara eat alone in the kitchen while she and Zala dined together. Amara, despite everything, never complained. She believed that kindness could soften even the hardest of hearts. She hoped that one day Nia would accept her, that Zala would be her sister in more than just name. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. She could feel the weight of her stepmother's glares, sense the tension in the house when her father was away. She did not know that soon, Nia's jealousy would reach a breaking point, one that would change her life forever. Nia could no longer bear to see Amara's beauty shining like the sun, casting shadows over her own daughter. Every day she watched as villagers admired the girl, their eyes filled with awe. Each compliment to Amara felt like a blade slicing through Nia's pride. It wasn't fair. Why should Amara, the daughter of another woman, outshine her own child? Night after night, Nia thought of ways to dull Amara's radiance. She considered locking her away, forbidding her from stepping outside, but that would only draw suspicion. She needed something permanent, something that would ruin Amara's beauty forever. Then, as she brushed Zala's hair one evening, an idea took root. Amara's hair, long, thick, and silky, was her crowning glory. The way it shimmered in the sun, cascading down her back like a waterfall, made her look almost otherworldly. If that hair were gone, so would her beauty. That night, as the moon hung low in the sky, Nia crept into Amara's small sleeping quarters. The girl lay peacefully, her breath soft and steady. Her long hair spread across the pillow, glowing in the silver light. In Nia's hand was an old, dull blade, its edges rusted from years of disuse. She hesitated for only a moment before grabbing a handful of Amara's hair and sawing through it. The blade tugged and tore, not slicing smoothly, but ripping unevenly, leaving jagged ends in its wake. Amara stirred slightly, a frown appearing on her face, but she did not wake. Nia worked quickly, cutting and hacking away until nothing was left but uneven tufts. She stepped back, breathing heavily, her heart pounding with a twisted satisfaction. The girl who had once been so admired would wake up to a nightmare. When the morning sun streamed through the window, Amara stretched and yawned, feeling a strange lightness around her head. She reached up, expecting to feel the familiar weight of her hair, but her fingers met nothing but rough, uneven strands. Confused, she scrambled out of bed and ran to the small mirror in the corner of the room. A strangled gasp escaped her lips. Her hair, her beautiful hair, was gone. What remained was a mess of uneven patches, some parts nearly bald, while others stuck out in awkward clumps. Her hands trembled as she touched the remains, disbelief clouding her thoughts. Behind her, cruel laughter echoed through the room. She turned to see Naya standing in the doorway, arms crossed, a satisfied smirk on her lips. "Look at you now," Nia sneered. "You think you're special. You think people love you for who you are. Without that hair, you're nothing. No one will admire you now. No one will ever love you." Tears blurred Amaras' vision. Her chest ached with a pain she had never felt before. She had lost something more than just her hair. She had lost a piece of herself. Choking on sobs, she turned and ran, desperate to escape the laughter, the cruelty, and the suffocating walls of the house that no longer felt like home. Amara ran, her bare feet pounding against the dirt path as tears blurred her vision. The laughter of her stepmother echoed in her ears, each word like a dagger piercing her heart. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps, but she did not stop. She did not know where she was going, only that she had to get away. Away from the house that had never felt like home, away from the cruelty that had stolen something precious from her. The village quickly disappeared behind her as she sprinted toward the dense forest at its edge. The towering trees loomed ahead, their branches twisting like outstretched fingers. Everyone in the village knew not to go too deep into the woods. Strange stories surrounded this place, whispers of spirits, of magic, of things unseen that lurked between the trees. But Amara did not care. The forest was better than the world she was leaving behind. As she pushed past the thick undergrowth, the cool shade of the forest wrapped around her like a cocoon. The rustling leaves above whispered softly, and the wind curled around her, carrying voices she did not understand. The further she ran, the more the sounds of the village faded, replaced by an eerie stillness. The only thing she could hear was the sound of her own sobs and the rhythmic drumming of her heartbeat. Her legs burned with exhaustion, but she kept moving until finally she collapsed at the base of an enormous tree. Its gnarled roots stretched out around her like the arms of an ancient guardian, and its thick, knotted trunk was scarred with symbols Amara did not recognize. She buried her face in her hands, her body shaking with grief. "How could she do this to me?" she whispered between sobs. "Why does she hate me so much?" A soft chuckle broke through the silence, making Amara's head snap up. "You ask questions the wind has carried for a long time, child." Amara's breath caught in her throat. Standing a few feet away was an old woman wrapped in layers of earth-toned fabric, her skin dark as the tree bark, her hair woven with beads and feathers. Her eyes, deep and knowing, studied Amara with a quiet intensity. She carried a wooden staff, its top carved into the shape of a serpent curling around a sun. Amara scrambled backward, her heart pounding. Who are you?" The woman smiled, her eyes twinkling like the night sky. "I am Mama Jaha," she said, her voice as smooth as river stones. "Healer of wounds, keeper of secrets, guardian of the forest." She stepped closer, her presence both unsettling and comforting. "And you, little one, are lost." Amara wiped her tear-streaked face with the back of her hand, feeling small under the woman's gaze. "I didn't know where else to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Mama Jaha tilted her head, studying her. "Fate brought you here. The trees whispered your name before you even entered." She reached out a hand, her fingers weathered with age and wisdom. "Tell me, child, why do you cry?" The question, so simple yet so heavy, made Amara's throat tighten. Fresh tears welled in her eyes as she reached up and touched the uneven tufts of hair on her head. "She took it from me," she choked out. "She wanted to make me ugly." Mama Jaha's expression did not change, but something ancient flickered in her gaze. "Ah," she murmured, "so the wicked hand of jealousy has struck you down." She knelt beside Amara, touching the earth with reverence. "But beauty, child, does not live in hair. Beauty is a flame that cannot be cut away." Amara shook her head, her voice filled with anguish. "But they won't see me the same. They only loved me because of how I looked. Mama Jaha let out a deep, knowing hum. Then they never truly saw you at all. The words settled in Amara's chest like a stone. She stared at the old woman, searching for meaning in her face. The wind stirred again, swirling around them as if the forest itself was listening. Mama Jaha slowly rose to her feet. "Come, child," she said, turning toward the depths of the forest. "Fate has not abandoned you. In fact, your journey is only beginning." Amara hesitated, glancing back toward the direction of the village. For the first time, she realized she did not want to go back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Taking a deep breath, she wiped the last of her tears and stood. Then, with a final glance at the great tree, she followed the mysterious woman into the unknown. Amara followed Mama Jaha through the dense forest, the towering trees casting long shadows as the evening sun dipped below the horizon. The air was thick with the scent of earth and wildflowers, and the distant hoots of owls echoed in the silence. Despite her sorrow, she felt an unusual sense of calm in the presence of the old woman, as though the forest itself had wrapped her in a protective embrace. They reached a clearing where a small hut, made of woven branches and dried leaves, stood nestled between the roots of an ancient baobab tree. Hanging herbs and charms swayed gently from the branches above, whispering in the wind. A fire crackled at the center of the clearing, casting flickering golden light on Mama Jaha's face as she turned to Amara. "You carry much pain, child," the old woman said, stirring a small clay pot over the fire. "But pain is a teacher, just as love and joy are. Do not let it turn your heart to stone." Amara lowered her gaze, her fingers brushing the uneven patches of her hair. "I don't know who I am without it," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought my beauty was all I had." Mama Jaha chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Foolish are those who believe beauty lives in skin and hair. Beauty is a flame, child. It burns in your heart, in your kindness, in your strength." She scooped a handful of dried leaves and crushed them between her fingers, letting the powder fall into the bubbling mixture. "Your stepmother thought she could take your power by taking your hair. But she was blind to the truth. Power does not live in things that can be stolen." Amara watched as the old woman dipped a small wooden bowl into the pot, filling it with the deep amber liquid. The steam rose in delicate tendrils, carrying a scent both floral and earthy, like the first breath of spring after a long winter. Mama Jaha held the bowl out to her. "Drink," she instructed. Amara hesitated, staring into the shimmering surface of the potion. "What is it?" "A gift from the earth, a blessing. It will not change your face, nor bring back what was lost, but it will remind you of who you truly are." Swallowing her uncertainty, Amara took the bowl and lifted it to her lips. The liquid was warm, smooth, and carried a taste she could not quite describe, a mix of honey, fire, and something ancient. As she drank, a strange sensation spread through her body. It was not magic in the way of fairy tales. There were no sudden flashes of light, no dramatic transformation. Instead, it was a quiet awakening, a deep hum in her bones, as if something long forgotten had stirred within her. Mama Jaha smiled knowingly. "Good. Now listen well, child." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a low murmur. "Your journey is only beginning. The one who took from you will soon learn that fate is not so easily controlled. What was done in cruelty will return in justice." Amara frowned. "What do you mean?" The old woman only chuckled, her dark eyes twinkling like the stars overhead. "You will see. Trust the path before you." Before Amara could ask another question, Mama Jaha turned away and walked toward the shadows of the forest. The trees seemed to shift and bend, swallowing her presence, until there was nothing left but the whispering wind. For the first time since her stepmother's cruel act, Amara did not feel broken. She did not know exactly what had changed within her, but she knew one thing: she was not powerless. With newfound resolve, she turned and made her way back to the village. As Amara walked back to the village, A strange energy pulsed through her veins. The night air felt different, crisper, alive. The trees whispered her name. The wind curled around her like an old friend, and the ground beneath her feet felt warmer, as if it recognized her. She could not explain it, but something had changed within her. By the time she reached the outskirts of the village, exhaustion weighed heavy on her limbs. The events of the night, the cruelty of her stepmother, her painful escape, and the encounter with Mama Jaha blurred together in her mind. Her body ached for rest, so she slipped quietly into her small sleeping quarters, unnoticed by her stepmother or stepsister. As soon as her head touched the pillow, she drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. Morning came with golden light spilling through the windows, warming Amara's skin. She stirred, stretching her arms above her head, but something felt different, lighter, softer. A cool breeze danced around her, though the windows were shut. Slowly she reached up to touch her head, expecting to feel the jagged remains of her once beautiful hair. Instead, her fingers met thick, silken strands. Her eyes flew open, and she bolted upright, heart hammering against her ribs. Her hair, which had been hacked away so cruelly, had not only grown back, it had flourished. Long, flowing, and impossibly smooth, it cascaded down her back in waves, shimmering like polished obsidian. The morning light caught strands of deep brown and gold, as if the very sun had woven itself into her locks. She gasped, her fingers trembling as she ran them through the silken lengths. This was impossible. No hair could grow back overnight. A flicker of movement caught her eye. The soft curtain by her window fluttered, though there was no wind. Confused, she reached toward it, and the fabric moved before she touched it, as if responding to her presence. Her breath caught in her throat. Heart pounding, she focused on the tiny flame of a candle sitting on the table. The air around her seemed to hum, as if it was waiting for her command. She exhaled slowly, and as she did, a gentle breeze swirled through the room, making the flame dance. Something deep inside her had awakened. Before she could fully grasp what was happening, a loud gasp rang from the doorway. Amara turned to see her stepsister, Zala, standing there, eyes wide with shock. "Your hair," Zala whispered, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. The sound drew more attention. Within minutes, voices filled the house, and soon, villagers gathered outside, murmuring in astonishment. Amara hesitated before stepping out, feeling dozens of eyes settle on her. Gasps and whispers spread like wildfire as the villagers took in her transformation. "It's even more beautiful than before. Did you see that?" The wind moved around her. "She carries the power of the spirits." Amara swallowed hard, unsure of what to say. She had always been admired for her beauty, but this was different. This was something beyond human understanding. A young boy, no older than 6, stumbled in front of her, holding his scraped knee with teary eyes. Without thinking, Amara knelt and placed her hand over the wound. A warmth spread from her fingertips, and before their eyes, the scrape faded, leaving behind smooth, unbroken skin. The boy gasped, eyes widening. "She's blessed by the earth," someone shouted. A ripple of awe spread through the crowd. The villagers whispered of miracles, of spirits, of ancient magic returning. Some looked upon Amara with reverence, others with fear. But one thing was certain. She was no longer just a beautiful girl. She was something more. And somewhere in the shadows of the crowd, Nia watched, her face pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. The stepmother who had tried to destroy Amaras' beauty now saw the truth. What she had taken was nothing compared to what Amara had gained. Nia's hands trembled as she watched the villagers gather around Amara, their eyes filled with wonder and admiration. Her stepdaughter, the girl she had tried to break, stood before them more radiant than ever, her hair flowing like liquid night, her presence commanding the very wind itself. It was impossible. It should have been impossible. Nia clenched her fists, fury bubbling beneath her skin. She had taken everything from Amara, her beauty, her confidence, her sense of worth. She had expected her to wither, to disappear in shame. And yet, here she stood, stronger than ever, basking in the attention Nia had tried so hard to steal away. The whispers of the villagers made Nia's rage burn hotter. She is touched by the spirits. Did you see her heal the boy? It was a miracle. She is meant for something greater. Nia refused to let this happen. If she could not destroy Amara, she would turn the village against her. Stepping forward, Nia raised her voice, letting her words slice through the awestruck silence. "Do you not see what is happening here?" she called out. "This is not a blessing. It is witchcraft." Gasps rippled through the crowd, and Amaras' eyes widened. Nia pressed on, her voice laced with venom. A girl loses her hair in one night, only to have it grow back even more beautiful by morning. She moves the wind with her hands, heals wounds with a touch. This is unnatural. The spirits do not grant such gifts lightly. She turned, searching the faces of those around her. You know the stories. Those who seek power beyond their place bring only misfortune. For a moment, uncertainty flickered in the eyes of a few villagers. Fear was powerful, and Nia knew it well. She had spent years using it to manipulate those around her. But this time was different. A voice rose from the crowd, strong and unwavering. "She healed my son." The man who spoke stepped forward, his young boy clinging to his side. She did not curse him. She did not bring misfortune. She healed him. He turned to face the others. "We have seen many cruel things in our time. This is not one of them," another voice followed. "She has always been kind, always been good. If she was given a gift, it is because she is worthy of it." More murmurs of agreement spread. The villagers nodded, some bowing their heads in respect. A few women reached out to touch Amara's hands as if hoping to share in her blessing. Nia's stomach twisted. This was not how it was supposed to go. Desperation clawed at her chest. "You are all fools," she spat. "This girl, this thing, will bring ruin upon us all." But no one listened. They were no longer looking at her. They were looking at Amara, and their gazes were filled not with fear, but with admiration. Something inside Nia snapped. She had lost. No, worse, she had been forgotten. As the villagers lifted Amara onto their shoulders, celebrating her as a gift from the spirits, Nia stepped back into the shadows. If she could not destroy Amara, she would find another way. She would take the power for herself. The village buzzed with excitement when the sound of galloping hooves echoed through its dirt roads. A royal messenger, clad in deep blue and gold, dismounted his horse in the village square, his eyes scanning the gathered crowd. The villagers, sensing the importance of his presence, whispered among themselves, their gazes shifting toward Amara. The messenger cleared his throat. "I bring word from the royal palace," he announced, his voice carrying authority. "His Highness Prince Malik has heard of a young woman with extraordinary beauty and gifts, one blessed by the spirits themselves. He wishes to meet her." Gasps spread through the crowd. A royal invitation. It was unheard of. Amara's breath caught in her throat. The prince wanted to meet her. She had never imagined such attention, let alone from someone as powerful as the future king. But before she could speak, Nia stepped forward, her mind already spinning with deceit. "Ah, yes," Nia said quickly, forcing a sweet smile. "You must be referring to my daughter Zala." She reached for Zala's hand and pulled her forward, ignoring the way the girl stiffened. "She is the most beautiful and gifted girl in the village." A murmur of confusion rippled through the villagers, but Nia silenced them with a sharp glance. The messenger studied Zala, his brow furrowing slightly. "She is the one who healed the child. The one whose beauty is praised across the land." Nia nodded eagerly. "Yes, yes. She is truly special. She has been blessed since birth." Amara opened her mouth to protest, but Zala shot her a warning look, half pleading, half fearful. Though Zala had often enjoyed her mother's favoritism, she knew the risks of getting caught in one of Nia's schemes. Yet, under her mother's forceful grip, she had no choice. The messenger hesitated, then nodded. Very well, the prince expects her at the palace immediately. Before Amara or the villagers could speak, Nia hurriedly ushered Zala away to prepare, throwing Amara a triumphant glare. That evening, Zala, dressed in fine garments hastily provided by her mother, was escorted to the palace. But as they entered the grand halls, her confidence wavered. The towering walls gleamed with gold, and noblemen and women adorned in silk whispered behind their hands, eyeing her with curiosity. When she was finally brought before the prince, her heart pounded. Prince Malik was even more striking than the stories described. Tall, regal, and possessing a quiet strength that made even the grand hall seem smaller in his presence. His sharp eyes studied her closely, and for a moment, silence stretched between them. "You are the one they speak of?" the prince asked, his tone neutral but unreadable. Zala swallowed hard. "Yes, your highness," she stammered, forcing a smile. "I am the one blessed by the spirits." The prince raised an eyebrow. "Show me." Zala blinked. "Pardon? The stories say you have a connection with the wind," he said, "that you can heal wounds with a touch. Prove it." Panic surged through her veins. She had no such power. She shot a quick glance at her mother, who had accompanied her and now stood to the side, her face pale but expectant. Zala took a deep breath and hesitantly lifted her hands, pretending to summon the wind. Nothing happened. The room remained still. Whispers broke out among the courtiers. The prince's gaze darkened. She turned to a nearby servant and with trembling hands reached for his arm. "Do you have an injury?" she asked desperately. The servant shook his head. Zala's throat tightened. The silence in the room was suffocating. Then a voice broke through. "This is a deception." The court turned as an elder stepped forward, one of the prince's advisors. He peered at Zala with piercing eyes. "She is not the one the spirits have blessed. She carries no power." The whispers turned into murmurs of disapproval. The prince's expression remained unreadable, but his eyes bore into Zala's, and she felt herself shrink under his gaze. "This is an insult to the crown," another nobleman muttered. Zala turned to Nia, who stood frozen in horror, her schemes unraveling before her eyes. Prince Malik straightened. "The real one will be found," he said, "and she will answer for this deception." Zala's knees nearly buckled with humiliation. The weight of her mother's lie had finally come crashing down. The village had never seen such a grand sight. A procession of royal guards, their armor gleaming under the sun, rode through the dusty roads, followed by a carriage adorned with gold and deep blue silk. The villagers whispered in awe, stepping aside as the entourage came to a stop in the center of the village. At the heart of it all was Prince Malik, dismounting his horse with effortless grace. He scanned the crowd, his sharp eyes searching for the girl he had heard so much about. The real one, not the fraud who had stood before him in the palace. When his gaze finally landed on Amara, standing among the villagers, he knew instantly. There was something about her, an air of quiet strength, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Amara, uncertain of what to do, lowered her gaze, but the prince approached her without hesitation. "You are the one I seek," he said simply. A hush fell over the village. Amara hesitated before nodding. "I am Amara, your highness." Prince Malik studied her, his expression unreadable. Unlike the nobles at court, his gaze did not linger on her beauty alone. Instead, he looked into her eyes, as if searching for something deeper. "I have heard much about you," he said, his voice steady but curious. "Not only of your beauty, but of your kindness, your wisdom, and the way the spirits seem to favor you." Amara did not know how to respond. She had never sought attention, let alone that of a prince. But as she stood before him, she realized there was no arrogance in his words, no hunger for power like her stepmother had shown, only genuine curiosity. The villagers, sensing something different about this moment, remained silent, waiting. After a pause, the prince continued. I have come to invite you to the palace. There is a grand festival in a few days, and I would be honored if you would attend as my guest. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amara's eyes widened. Me? The prince nodded. You have been gifted with something extraordinary. I would like to know more about you, not just for what the spirits have given you, but for who you are. Amara glanced at the villagers, who nodded in encouragement. Then her gaze flickered toward Nia and Zala, both standing at a distance. Nia's face was a mask of barely contained rage, while Zala looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Amara took a deep breath. She had spent years being told she was nothing, that she was only valuable for her beauty. But this was different. The prince was not inviting her because of how she looked. He was inviting her because of something more. Lifting her chin, she met his gaze and nodded. I accept, Your Highness. A smile touched Prince Malik's lips. Then we leave at sunrise. As dawn approached, the village was alive with excitement for Amaras' journey to the palace. The people gathered to celebrate her, offering blessings and well wishes. But in the shadows, Nia seethed with rage. She had lost control of the narrative. Amara was not only more beautiful than before, but now held the favor of the prince himself. Nia refused to accept defeat. That night, she prepared a deadly concoction, a poison derived from a rare, bitter root. If she could not destroy Amara's beauty, she would destroy Amara herself. Under the guise of making peace, Nia approached Amara with a cup of sweetened tea. My dear, she said, forcing a warm smile, I have wronged you, and I wish to make amends. Drink this as a symbol of our new beginning. Amara, always trusting but now wiser, took the cup. The moment her fingers touched it, a strange sensation ran up her arm, a warning. The spirits whispered in her ear, urging her to look closer. She discreetly tilted the cup, allowing a few drops to spill onto the ground. The soil darkened instantly, the leaves nearby withering in seconds. Before Amara could react, Nia, growing impatient, snatched the cup back. If you do not trust me, I shall drink first. In her desperation to prove herself, she sipped the poisoned tea without thinking. A strangled gasp escaped her lips as her body convulsed. The villagers turned in shock as Nia fell to the ground, her own treachery exposed before them all. The elders, disgusted by her wickedness, declared her banished from the village forever. As Nia was led away, Amara watched in silence, knowing that justice had finally been served. As the dust settled on Nia's downfall, Amara stood at the edge of the village, watching the woman who had tormented her disappear into the horizon. A part of her could have celebrated, could have reveled in revenge, but she did not. Instead, she let out a quiet breath, choosing to release the hatred that had threatened to take root in her heart. She would not let bitterness define her. Though she forgave, she would never forget. The scars of her past would serve as a reminder, not of pain, but of resilience. She had survived cruelty, betrayal, and deception, yet she stood stronger than ever. Now, she had a choice: to live for herself or to use the gifts she had been given to help others. With the prince's invitation still open, Amara traveled to the palace, not as a helpless girl, but as a woman with purpose. Word of her kindness and power spread quickly, and soon, people from across the kingdom sought her out, not for her beauty, but for her healing touch, her wisdom, and her strength. She tended to the sick, comforted the grieving, and helped the poor, becoming a beacon of hope for those in need. Prince Malik, having watched her selflessness, knew there was no one more worthy to stand by his side. One evening, under the golden glow of the palace gardens, he knelt before her and asked for her hand. But his words were not about wealth, power, or beauty. He spoke of her heart, her courage, and the light she carried within. With a smile, Amara accepted, not because he was a prince, but because he saw her for who she truly was. And so, she became not just a queen, but a legend, a reminder that true beauty is found not in appearance, but in the kindness, strength, and love that one shares with the world.